Live.
It's like nobody ever showed up to the hearings more.
Good. All right. Hi,
Hello.
welcome to the September 5th, 2024 meeting of the Athens-Clarke County Planning Commission. For those of you viewing online, congratulations. If you need an agenda, you can go to accgov.com/planning. If you are attending in person, grab an agenda that's outside by the door. For each agenda item, we will begin with a report from ACC Planning staff. This is followed by a presentation by the applicant, not to exceed 10 minutes. We will then hear from members of the public. 3 minutes are allowed for any member of the public who wishes to address the commission. When addressing the commission, provide your name, address, and the nature of your interest in the project. Direct your comments to the planning commission and not the applicants. Please no applauding or jeering when anybody is speaking. Exhibits may be displayed by the applicants or members of the public at the podium. Written correspondence received by noon yesterday has been forwarded to the commission as part of the public record. Any additional written material to be placed into the record must be read during public comment within the 3-minute time limit. For all speakers, please pay attention to the timing device near the podium. The device will display a yellow warning light when you have 30 seconds left and then a red light when your time is up. After the public comment period, the applicant or their representative may request a 2-minute response. After that, the applicant will take their seat in the audience. At this point, the public portion for the agenda item is closed and the planning commission will proceed to discuss the item. We will receive no additional public or applicant comments unless requested by a commissioner. And last thing, please note that there are microphones in this room and they're sensitive and the meeting is being broadcast live. So know that, and please turn off or silence your cell phone. And so with that, can we get an introduction of staff reports for the record? A motion?
Make a motion.
All right, motion by Mike. Second by Sarah. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. And then I get a motion for the meeting minutes from August 1st, 2024.
I'll make a motion.
All right. Second. Motion by Mike, second by Sarah. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, unanimous. Thank you. May courts review and public comment. Do we have anything from May courts?
You want to ask for public comment first?
Just if anybody has any public comment regarding May courts, and then if there's none, then we can give it up.
I wasn't sure if there was like a report about May courts or something.
Well, we've got a quick update, but
Oh, okay. Is anybody here to talk about May courts? No? All right. That's cool. All right. What do you got?
Yeah, so the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is our 25-year plan going into 2050, is in its final review phase and out for public comment now. So this is everyone's last chance if they want to get anything in there about the final document for May courts. And that's open for 30 days. It's open right now.
Is that on the planning commission
It's
website?
actually on the May courts website.
The May courts website? Okay. All right. Good job. Thank you. All right. So with that, we go to old business. The only item on old business is the inclusionary zoning text amendment.
be any slides on this?
Yeah, I was like,
Yep.
slides,
Nope.
yeah.
Just discussion. So this was an item that came before the planning commission at the August meeting. We had quick presentation. There was good discussion. There were some questions raised. The staff took those questions under advisement, reached out to the housing and community development staff to clarify the questions about HUD definitions and the 60%, the 80%, and the number of units that would be indexed against those different AMI levels. And so got those answers, got it back to you. The cover memo addresses those things, but just a quick snapshot of why we're doing this. Having used the inclusionary zoning ordinance for a little while, staff between our departments, Solomon's here from HCD, thank you. Working together, we've realized there's some things that needed to be tightened up, and there was some wording in there that With us being a college town, we do count units and bedrooms differently. That is different than other communities that have inclusionary zoning. So that was one of the very first things we needed to clarify. We also needed to make sure that those HUD home rents were simplified so that people could actually feel comfortable doing the math up front to take advantage of the program rather than struggle with it and maybe take a pass on using what the ordinance has to offer. That. There was a reference to fee simple transactions, and that was hinting at the fact that we were looking at this towards single family structures. We're not. Right now, as worded, this is for multifamily developments. We hope to get to the point of having inclusionary zoning for single family. But right now, the ordinance is focused on multifamily. So we cleaned that up. Clarified the use of an inclusionary housing agreement as well as a land use restriction agreement. What the two are, why we need them. This pins that down. And that, again, the difference between dwelling unit and unit was a point of clarification we needed to deal with, especially when it came to the leasing of those as affordable housing. Clean that up. And then our ability to conduct on-site monitoring. We needed more specificity in the ordinance to actually follow up and enforce the goals of what we're trying to do over the long haul. So those are the things that were added. If there are any questions, happy to answer those now. Solomon's got my back on other things. Otherwise, that's the staff presentation.
Do we have any comments? We do approval, like
Public comment?
comments for and against? Yeah, okay. Is there anybody here who would like to speak in favor of the text amendment changes? Or in opposition to them? Okay, all right, so we'll take it over here. Sarah.
I have questions. One, I was curious about the administration of the inclusionary housing program, section 927(8), inclusionary housing agreement, E1. Why are we changing mandatory reporting of the agreement to discretionary within the discretion of the county?
So 927.8 or 927.9 E1.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm gonna, maybe Solomon, you can help me out. Prior, so I think looking at the language that's been struck is important.
Yeah.
So the prior language, no development agreement or project specific approval may be issued without an executed inclusionary housing agreement executed by the owner. I think part of this was having representatives being able to do that. Right. So the by the owner.
We might be looking at different places. So I'm looking at the bottom of,
10,
page
page 10.
11. The top of page 11.
Okay.
The bottom of the first paragraph.
Okay.
Athens-Clarke County may choose to record or publish this agreement at its sole discretion, which is replacing recordation of the agreement shall be a condition of approval of any development agreement, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, you may have stumped me.
Okay, that's, are we, are we like looking at the same thing? Like, have I identified it at least?
No, yeah, we're on the right.
Okay, cool.
Yep, I'm with you. At its sole discretion, recordation of the agreement shall be a condition of approval of any development agreement. I know there were mechanics of this. That was one of those things that I think was a procedural kind of trip. That we had some things that were getting hung up on the timing of the recording of the agreement and how that does or doesn't interact with financing. And so having the ability at the county's discretion, as we are the party to this, to be able to record it at the timing that we think is important, I think is what this is getting at. So that we can move forward with a project and not be hung up on a linear flow and get stuck. Because the recording can happen, if we feel comfortable with it, we can do the recording at a time later than we would normally be looking for.
Yeah.
Is that right?
And so and this is something that would be recorded with the deeds or with the courts? Okay. So the effect of this is that recording will happen.
Yes.
It is just discretionary exactly when that happens, and the county will be the one to do it.
Gives us more flexibility so that the deal can actually be done.
Okay, that totally makes sense. I have one other question. And I find where it is, okay, page 6. Paragraph C3, multi-bedroom units may not utilize multiple lease agreements for each bedroom, but rather must be leased as a single dwelling unit. Why?
So, and I don't want to jump in front of you.
It was a management issue, was it not?
Yeah,
Like the too many moving parts.
Yeah, I think that's what we're kind of speak to. Well, we were basically saying that would be a management issue, that there would be a lot of different variables coming into it that weren't necessary for us to make this happen.
Oversight of the program has some costs.
Yeah.
And anything we can do to actually help with enforcement. So if you have a 4-bedroom unit and you've got 4 records you've got to keep up with in the moving parts of 4 tenants as opposed to 1, that's a huge change, especially when we might have a dozen units in a given development, 48 versus 12 agreements to keep up with.
Yeah, and there's, am I understanding correctly, there's not, like means testing for the tenants, right?
Say that again.
There's no means testing for the tenants here, right?
I'm unfamiliar with the phrase means testing.
Like saying, checking the income of the tenants who live here. All based on the AMI, the 60%.
There will be, we will be doing, I think this is in this as well, a yearly monitoring to make sure that the tenants are actually eligible for the other parts of the ordinance. So all the tenants do have to be at between, I believe, or less than 80% AMI. So there would be yearly monitoring to ensure that that was happening.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So if you're administering this program and you've got 4 tenants and you have to check in on all of them, right? How is it, what level of difficulty are you adding there when each tenant has their own lease versus each tenant is all under the same lease, but you still have to have the information on each tenant?
In essence, it would be, we would check in once and get all of that information at once for the kind of yearly monitoring instead of having to do it on a more ongoing basis.
Okay.
So the program is really designed for family occupancies, honestly, and not necessarily for individual occupancies of individual bedrooms inside the unit.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was assuming when I first read it, was that this is designed to basically make it so that student housing is not utilizing the program.
Or if they are utilizing it, they're doing it by the unit. It doesn't prohibit.
Right.
Yeah, it does, but yes, it does not prohibit it. But like you were just saying, with the intent of the program, it kind of does both things, right? It makes it simpler and also discourages student housing developers from utilizing it, especially if their business model is leasing by the bedroom.
And if I can, the other moving part of this was we had some developers suggesting that they would have an affordable bedroom inside of a unit.
Which is not
the design intent of the ordinance, and it certainly makes for a nightmare from a management standpoint of the program.
I can verify that from having done both sides of management, both single individual bedroom for leases as opposed to one whole lease. It's more than 4 times the work is what you kind of have to.
Another issue would be the fact that we benchmarked all of the income kind of verification and numbers off of home, which does not have a metric for individual bedrooms.
Oh.
So that's another aspect of it. And that was another decision to say that this is kind of the agreed upon standard for affordable housing. Instead of reinventing the wheel, we'll just kind of start from there.
Sarah, I'm reminded of an applicant once that wanted to offer affordable units in their building and the rent would be the same. They would just put 2 beds in a room. So, yeah.
Okay, I think that answers my question about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more other questions? Alex, yes.
Not
Oh.
the gentleman, but
Oh, okay.
on this. And this first question doesn't have anything to do with the new text or the amendment. So I don't know if it's appropriate to even bring up. But on, well, I'll just go ahead and throw it. 9-27-1, B4, talking about ensuring that developers incur no loss penalty and have reasonable prospects of realizing profit, by virtue of density bonus. So when a landlord is doing this and offering lower rent housing in some of the units, one of the rewards is the county will grant higher density. Is that correct? Okay. So my question is, and this is in here not being changed, so I don't mean to waste anyone's time, but I'm trying to understand it because on the future land use, density, as we know, is coming up a lot. And so, which apparently is an important thing for developers because they can do more for the money they've already put in for the groundwork, and then everything gets a little less. If we're able to give them a higher density because they're doing this good service, why are we not able to do the higher density anyway? Is like, if higher density is a problem, why are we allowing a problem for just doing a good deed? Which I believe it's a good deed. I'm not knocking what's going on here. But how does it happen that it's all of a sudden okay because the higher density still brings the problems that we are trying to avoid?
Okay, a couple things in there. Sort of making the case that density is a problem. The problems that come along with density, I guess, would be impacts to infrastructure. We can just probably focus there. The increased density means we've got more activity. We have more use of water resources, use of sanitary sewer, roadways potentially, and then sort of ancillary things on other uses, schools, fire and emergency services, things like that. The exercise that we're going through with the future land use map is to consider where density can be increased appropriately. Actually, where I thought you're going with your question was, if we're going through that exercise, do we want to be careful to not put too much density by right on the map in a way that would disincentivize participation in this program? To that question.
Well, that was part B.
Okay, so.
It really was, because all of a sudden you kill it.
Well, so putting it where it's appropriate is part of that challenge. And so we've got a housing market that we're managing, right? And so there are places where I think we want to let this tool do the heavy lifting. Because we want developers to take the inclusionary zoning seriously as an alternative. And that phrase that you picked up on in the ordinance, I think is an important one because it's kind of the social contract aspect of the ordinance, where we need these things as a community in order to make this pencil for you, developer, because you're the one with the skin in the game on building it. We have to meet you somewhere. And that statement sets the table for us to kind of have a meeting in the middle and then do the math, right? There are going to be portions of town as we go through the future land use map exercise and how that translates into zoning would come next, where we may put a ceiling on the density that we're talking about with a full notion that this might take you past that ceiling. Because we want this to work. So there may be other places in town where it's absolutely appropriate because we have capacity for infrastructure to take the density higher, or maybe you wouldn't even need this to be able to build there, but that's okay because we are trying to bring development there without this necessarily being in play. So there's context to what we're about to do with our land use planning, where we're going to want to be careful to not sell out with putting too much density on the map, because we're going to want this program to work. But there might be some areas where it's okay for us to go up a notch. This is still on the table. And keep in mind, this is for multifamily right now. So one of the things we've spent a lot of time talking about is how to get density in our single family areas. This program is not for the single family areas right now. Does that help?
That does help.
Okay. Good question.
Questions, or I'll entertain a motion? There.
Can someone help me figure out where? I was having trouble finding it. Where the mechanism for checking the income level of what is.
So the
Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. Page 6, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to make you get up.
Well, and also page 3 in the affordable rent definition.
Yeah, in the definition.
Questions, motions? Thoughts, concerns?
I will say this is not going to be the last time that we're looking at the text of this ordinance, if that provides any relief. It's still on our work program to look at the single family side of inclusionary zoning. And I'm sure when we do that, we'll have more lessons learned to come back to the multifamily side of it, if that helps.
Kind of had that feeling. I just could see some things that might whip back around.
Understood?
I am reminded of the first time that we saw this when it came through, and I was looking at it and I was thinking about it and I was saying, you know what? I don't know if it's a good program. I don't know if it's a good plan. Because density is something we need more of and is a good thing. And I bet in a few years, this inclusionary zoning plan will be used as a reason to not allow significant, appropriate amounts of density in town. That seems to be what we're talking about making happen. But there's no reason, to, I think, keep a broken ordinance. Might as well see how it goes. So, I would like to make a motion to recommend approval of this text amendment.
Second, all right.
I'm sorry, second was.
Second.
Here.
Second,
Thank you.
yeah. How do you want to do vote?
Want to do a roll or? Roll call. Fine.
Or, yeah.
Gehring,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Bass,
Yes.
Sams,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Lord,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, next item is moving into new business. 4,500 and 4350 Atlanta Highway and 125 Bedford Road.
And for the benefit of the audience, my name is Stephen Jacques. I'm a planner here at the Planning Department. I'll be presenting the staff report for this case. At 4,500 Atlanta Highway and a few adjacent parcels. The request is to amend a CG, RM2, and RS5 PD. The purpose is to build 878 residential units, 421 single-family detached units, 219 single-family attached, so known as townhomes, 238 multifamily units. The specifics of the proposal reconfigure, the site plan reconfigures lots, blocks, and street layouts to add approximately 78 units to the existing 800-unit binding plan. It does not alter the current binding plan for the commercial at the Atlanta Highway frontage, although this proposal does not include building that either. And it replaces the architectural pattern book that is the binding architecture with the developer's stock plans. In this case, it's coming from D.R. Horton. The applicant is requesting 6 waivers. Staff supports 1 of them. We oppose 1 of them, and we need more information on 4 of them before we can make a recommendation. Our reasoning is all laid out in your staff report. I'd like to note that this PD was established in 2004. It has been amended in 2005, amended in 2007, and then amended in 2015, and it's the 2015 plan that is currently in effect. This will come up later when we talk about what are the issues in play here, but we started in 2004 with a very new urbanist style design, and up through 2007, those principles were largely in effect. 2015 begins to deviate, and then this project deviates further from that original design. Here's the aerial of the site. It's very difficult to see from Atlanta Highway. The frontage is very narrow. There's just some woods there. You can see basically the whole lot is wooded with the exception of they cut in some future roads and blocks here. And then there's a creek that runs through with a bit of a lake, and there's a dam here. At the top, you have the CSX rail line that creates the edge, and there's not really much you can do about that railroad. You can't cross it. And then on the bottom, you have Atlanta Highway. To your right, you have Coggins Industrial Park, a lot of light industry, light industrial warehouses. You have some residential over here, and then you have Cleveland Road coming up on the left side. You recently approved a townhouse project here at 5100 Atlanta Highway, and part of this project, they would be an expectation they would build a sewer connection to enable that other project to move forward. Future land use map is not changing as part of this request. It doesn't have to. It's currently mixed density residential on the back, and then general business on the front, in keeping with the plan for commercial in front and residential of various types in the back. Same thing with the zoning. It's not changing either. You have RS5, the single family zone in the back, and then you have an RM2 section. That's this brown part here for the multifamily. And then you have commercial general up front. You saw a section of this PD was withdrawn for a car dealership, I believe it was last year. So it's no longer in the PD, but everything else is. This is a picture of the environmental areas on the site. You can see the green is where we've got a stream coming through in that riparian area. You've got the dam right here that would be kind of reconstructed, repaired as part of this project to make sure it's safe and provides some access across it. And then you've got the wetland pond kind of area that's coming across. Here's the site plan. We've got and I'll zoom in a minute, but we've got basically our single family detached is going to be back here. staying out of the environmental areas, working across them with a couple of bridges. Then we've got our townhomes right here in this pod, and then we've got our multifamily in this pod here. We've got a connection to Atlanta Highway. This is the main connection. There's also a connection posed here at Dakota Drive. And then there's a connection through here there was a zoning action at this knockoff property, and they were required to leave a stretch of land there for a future connection to Whitetail Way. The railroad here is up at the top, so you see some cul-de-sacs. That represents essentially where the end of the property is, and that's a hard boundary. So we're zooming in here. This is the single-family portion. The street layout is different from the current plan. The lot layout is a little different, but otherwise it's just single-family. And then you have your townhouses here on the left. You've got some roundabouts as you come through the main street here. And then you've got some multifamily here. This is where our staff would note that we've got some, and we pointed this out in the staff report, we've got some alleys that are basically serving as streets. Staff feels that that's not exactly the appropriate use of an alley. Alley is in general supposed to be a place where you're putting utilities and services, trash collection, car storage, that sort of thing. And the street is supposed to be a more public place where folks interact. We've got street trees. You might have some on-street parking. It's a more public place. And so right now we've got some folks whose front door is looking out onto their neighbor's rear because of this alley configuration. There's also a little bit of green space in between these rows of homes. In some cases, we've got back doors on those, and we've got front doors on the alleys. And in one of the points that staff has pointed out is we'd like to see a little bit more of kind of a park-like green space feature. That's a design comment on our end. Here's a sample elevation of what the townhouses would look like. And then these are our single-family renderings. See slight variations in the variety there, but all of them are single-family detached. Our staff report has gone into quite a bit of detail about how we feel that this is incompatible with the 2023 comprehensive plan and some of the design choices. We've got 200 acres here, and we've only got 3 housing types. We've got single family detached, single family attached, and then a multifamily product. The commercial node is not being built here, and so this can't really serve as the node that it was always intended to be. And there's only 3 connections to the property. And again, without that commercial node, you don't have the opportunity to walk to a store or a coffee shop or that sort of thing. And so you're kind of limited. You're going to be mostly limited as long as that commercial isn't built to driving to other places to get where you need to go. And also a comprehensive plan would look at green space, arts. We want to see those featured in these kinds of plans as well. It is compatible with our future land use map and our zoning map. Those don't have to change. However, if you do look at the description of the future land use character, this isn't necessarily compatible with some of the design elements that are included there. There's also a list of code compliance issues that would need to be resolved to get into compliance with our zoning ordinance. As I said, there are 6 waivers. Staff supports 1, does not support the 1, and then needs some more information from the designer to make a recommendation on or other ones. The main issue here, and it's been an issue that has come up on some other projects around town, is that we've got some design drift here. We've had projects like this one, like Oak Grove, Somerville, Whitehall Village. You saw Lakewood last month, where they start out with these new urbanist design principles. The inspiration for this particular project is Birkdale Village, which is a project that got built in metropolitan Charlotte. And you get a high level of design and they meet a lot of community objectives. And then over time, these projects tend to get amended and they start to depart from that original design intent, and you lose some of that compatibility with the community's plans and where staff sees important design principles in play. That was a discussion with Lakewood with you all last month, where generally the design was well received, and the concern was that this would get eroded over time, potentially as designers and ownership changed. So this is the flip side of that here. A bit of a reduction in the housing variety and the distribution of that housing relative to previous versions of the plan that had these, instead of putting the houses in pods, they just sprinkled the different types amongst each other. You had a lot of 4 to 6 unit buildings called missing middle that were included. You had some civic spaces set aside, some institutional spaces for things like daycares, libraries, that kind of thing in the original plan. You had central green spaces. Those are a little bit more limited. The neighborhood commercial node. Again, without that node, this just becomes a bit of a car dependent suburb. And so staff would see that as an important node to be developed alongside the residential. Substituting alleys for streets, again, we feel like in the absence of a justification for that, we'd want to see streets. That's a better use. And then, for lack of a better word, some flat architecture. It's not necessarily pulling from the context of the area and the traditions of this part of the country in terms of its design. It lacks some of the features that promote human connection, front porches and that sort of thing. What we're getting here is essentially some increased density, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but not necessarily the other design principles that go along with making that density into a great human habitat. We would note that housing is really important. Having enough housing for everyone who wants to live in Athens is super important, but there's also other things that we need to make a functional community, including fiscally sustainable infrastructure. And to the applicant's credit, more density, all other things being equal, more density helps create more fiscal sustainability. So we're getting more density here. The human social connection, certain ways we can design buildings that promote people's ability to form connections with each other, friendships, that sort of thing. Economic opportunity, again, no commercial node here. There's less opportunity. There's environmental sustainability, and to their credit, they're staying out of the environmental areas, but this is also right now a project that's going to be mostly dependent on car travel, resiliency, adaptability, and then aesthetic beauty to inspire people to care for the community over the long haul. And so when this project got started in 2004, it was meeting more of these principles, and it's tended to drift away from that over time. And so that's kind of the point that we want to pitch to the Planning Commission is what's being proposed more compatible with the community's plans or less compatible than what's currently on the books for the plan. With that, I'll conclude the staff report and turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you, Stephen. Now we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Scott Haynes. I'm a landscape architect. I work for W&A Engineering, which is located at 355 Anita Street here in Athens, Georgia. I'm here tonight to present a project that I'm sure will garner a good deal of discussion. What you have before you tonight is a large project that seeks to address a very large problem. That problem being the shortage of housing that we have in this community, and more specifically, the shortage of we might call it attainable housing. We feel this project is an opportunity to make a significant impact on that problem. The original PD and even subsequent amendments, those were all developed and conceived in a different environment than we have today. And I understand staff wanting to pull comparisons to those plans. But I would also ask that tonight we consider the plan in the context of today. Right now, we need a volume of housing. We need that housing within a sewer basin that can serve it. And we need it on a corridor that can support it as well. And we believe that this plan and this project, this site can meet those needs. I'm going to talk about a couple of things just real quick, touch on my limited time. Did it jump? Here we go. Thanks. You back running.
Sorry about that.
I'd like to start to talk about this plan. I understand there's some confusion about the unit orientation. I acknowledge that that was because we provided insufficient data to really allow staff to fully evaluate this. But for clarity, We're not proposing any unit fronts to face any unit rears. Sorry, this clicker is just a little slow. Could you advance the next slide? Here you can see how we're going to lay out the configuration of the multifamily and the townhomes. They are going to face on publicly accessible greens. They will be accessed from alleys for automobiles in the rear. We're not using alleys as streets that are intended for cars, and we're intended for the fronts of the units to face public green space connected by sidewalks. Slide if you don't mind. See here, we've laid green lines on where units face fronts, and purple where rears face alleys. And that's consistent in both pods, both for both RM2 pods, the townhomes, and for multifamily. I'd also acknowledge that we missed on opportunities to provide more connectivity for walkability in this community, this plan. We plan on addressing that in our next iteration towards the master plan submittal. That will include making sure we don't have walkways that dead end into alleys, that those walkways continue through and connect to the major sidewalk networks. And I will say to all of these things, we'll connect down to the future commercial area, and our sidewalk will be provided down for that. We are also going to be discussing this project with transportation, public transportation, to make sure that we understand their desires for bus service to the site. It's my understanding that their bus route currently doesn't serve this far out. It stops at the Georgia Square Mall, but we know when the mall comes online, it'll provide a new transit station, and there's probably plans. I know there's desired plans to extend that service out to this site. So we have a meeting already planned. I believe it's next week, to sit down and talk about their desires and what they would like to see for this project. Next slide, please. Regarding the sewer. So right now, we know that there's an issue with the adjacent development. We've heard that through the application that came for you in July. We've been in contact with, DR Horton has been in contact with that developer. What I can tell you right now is that DR Horton is committed to continuing conversations with the adjacent project developer in regards to those needs for gravity sewer. I know that DR has prior business relationships with that entity, and they have interest in maintaining those relationships for the sake of future business. So there's a good faith effort. They want to continue that conversation. That said, the current proposed routing option is currently too conceptual for DR to make real commitments to. This is due to several factors that could have impacts on the project, such as loss of tree canopy, stormwater conflicts with what we're proposing, and also environmental impacts, particular impacts on wetlands. Additional engineering study and plan development will be needed prior to any potential agreement being reached. I do also want to say that Public Works has confirmed that there is no expectation that DR Horton provide this connection to the property line, merely that we would work with the applicant, work with the other property owner to provide a route to it. Asking them to construct a sewer line along this stretch of environmental area would be, it's going to be expensive, and it's going to have a lot of impact. So the expectation would be on the other property developer to provide that. Finally, I want to talk just a second about our waivers. I know that we have, go to the next slide, please. I know that we have several that we need to clean up, and we're wanting to work with staff on that, trying to schedule a meeting with them next week to go and hash out some of these things. One of the waivers I did want to mention, I think is important for this discussion and a larger discussion about development and affordability in this town, is this mass grading ordinance. Right now, you're prohibited in single family zones from disturbing more than 25 acres. This was a result of things that happened during the recession, and properties that were essentially became pipe farms or issues. It was reactive to that. But the real effect of it is it creates a lot of expense for developments. We're asking that that be extended to 50 acres, which is what the state allows before you have to get written permission to disturb more than that to go. By limiting us to 25 acres envelope for disturbance, it just means that you're going to have to put in walls that are unnecessary. It's extremely difficult to balance large scale earthworks. It's also very hard to manage stormwater in larger contexts. So all of these things mean that those costs, raise development costs, which you know gets transferred to the prices of houses at the end of the day. So we do ask that you guys consider that, not only in this development, but in a larger context when we're talking about affordable housing and development in this community, because sites that are challenged with topography and larger sites really need consideration for that. Thank you all tonight for hearing me and considering this. I look forward to hearing your comments and certainly open to any questions that you may have. Thank you.
You, now, do we have, anyone who would like to speak in favor of this? Oh, no, we're not doing that. Oh, okay, all right, yeah, so anybody who would like to speak in favor of this proposal, may come up. Or if you are here to speak in opposition. Have your time. All right, well, seeing none, take it behind the rail. Anybody have any questions, comments? Yes, Alex.
Do we have any other developments where when you drive into it and around it, you're only looking at the back end of the units? Is there another development?
We have other developments.
I'm seeing here is a lot of that, so.
We have other developments that are alley loaded. We have a handful, but not very many developments that front onto a green. Ridgepoint has some aspects of that, some units on that. It's about this density, maybe a little less. But no, we don't have too many like that. Where we've got alley loaded situations, right now, where we have those other opportunities like Ansonboro, for example, has alley access across the rear, there is still circulation across the fronts of those units. Where we have lotting patterns that have alley loaded service, we still have frontage on public streets, and that's allowed to be done by right that way. I think the nature of this request is to fold in that notion of having front porches onto green spaces as part of their design intent. And the PD is one of those vehicles to allow for that to happen.
The main road going in here does, that comes front onto the public right away that comes into here.
Okay, does it? Because it looked like part of it, I was looking at green and blue, green facing in and blue facing the street.
Sam, do you mind pulling up that slide that had the two-tone color of the site plan?
Yeah. But you mean the main, the serious main one. I see what you're saying there. Then once you get into the meat of the project, you are looking at back end of everything. So the alley, and that's what I think we're talking about, the alleys are the streets, basically.
Yeah, and are you talking about the single family portions of the rear? Because those do have, a few of those do have alley loaded access, but they also front on the streets or on a green space like you see right there. The applicant possibly, I think that's the case, is it?
They're all labeled as alleys, those interior ones.
The staff concern was a little bit more about the interior of those larger blocks there, the two pods.
Okay.
I suppose down on the far left-hand side, which are the townhomes, there are some sides that sort of face that slightly diangular road. Then the structures on the west side of that do then again front on it as well.
Yeah, okay, now I'm seeing that, and that's cool. It just looks like a lot of looking at the back end of a house.
Yeah, no,
And that is not, not to get in their business of what people want to buy, but we talk about neighborhoods where this is nice, this feels good, I want to continue to keep this place nice. And that's just one of my concerns is where is that going to go later? Because that's not the part of the house you want to look at from the road.
Yeah, if you're coming and going in your car, you're just seeing the backs of the building.
Why does it matter? What it looks like
I'm
in a
not
car?
necessarily saying it does,
Oh.
but it would from my perspective, selling one.
Mm.
And so if that would, then that means there's an issue. And that issue means, will that wear out in time? Then what happens to the neighborhood? I know DR Horton, they got a lot more research than I do, but they say this is sustainable design for the next 50 years. I'm gonna, bow to that a little bit, but it's a lot. It's not normal. Maybe that's just fine.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely,
Sarah, you want to say something? I'm sorry.
yeah, I mean, it definitely does, looking at the pictures, it looks like a place where, houses are gonna be really, really affordable. It does not look like a luxury development in any kind of way. And I mean, trees not really visible in the projections. Yeah, I mean, I guess that there's always that trade-off between affordability and investment, right? I generally agree with staff's comments about it being a whole lot of acreage for very little diversity of building type or housing type or use. Yeah, that does not seem like it would be a good place to live. Either in the house or in the neighborhood. It's just the 200 acres of the same thing.
I have
Comments?
I was gonna say, kind of piggybacking on the question about the alleys, what is the difference between an alley and a street? Like, what are the standards that differ there? What's the benefit to the developer of having these be alleys and not streets?
So with street design, there's a functional difference in terms of width. Alleys are meant to be more narrow, 12-foot improved widths is our typical when we have alley loaded developments. And the streets are where there's more animation. There's the sidewalk, there's street trees, forward orientation of the architecture is towards the street. Animating the street is something that's kind of built into our modest design standards that we have now. The alley is really intended, as noted in the staff report, for service entry, for occupants to come and go. And it tends to be minimized as a result because you're only dealing with those folks that live there. It's not the only way in and out. It's really just meant to provide service areas. And
Are there like tree standards and like street trees and those kind of things?
that's what I was saying. On the public street, there aren't on alleys, no. On the street.
You don't have to have trees or sidewalks or with all that in alleys?
That's correct.
Is in a normal city, you would have, normal street alley, because the block would be divided in half by an alley. But in these, it's just all alleys. It's not like every other one is a street. It's just alley, 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 alley. So that would be a concern for me because it seems like you're still directing everybody that lives there still has to drive their car down an alley and they can't drive down a street at all to get to their house. So none of that traffic is going on a wider, nicer road. It's all going down an alley. So that doesn't seem like a very good idea to me. Like I would be more interested if it was like every other street, like maybe a street and then a block with an alley down it. Or seem to be a smarter, or more aesthetically pleasing solution too.
Alex?
I'm sorry, I sometimes jump in, but
No, that's totally
Jumping
fine.
into
I
what you're
totally,
saying.
no, I do the same thing. It's totally fine.
with an alley, you must have a street in logic. And I mean, I don't know that it's ever defined that way, but alleys are behind things and streets are in front of things. And so you can't have an alley if you don't have it
Like
like
a
that.
partner to the street.
Yeah, and that,
They come as a set, kind of like a street and
Yeah.
alley.
so it's almost like turn them around
Yeah.
and, yeah, or do, but I think that just, without just barreling into it and going too far with the details of design, I don't want to jump into that, but it is to me a pretty strong, it's a lot of houses where you're doing it. I mean, this is kind of backwards. It won't if there's no streets and it's all alleys, then it's gonna just feel less inviting, which might also mean if you want to clear 50 acres, you're doing something that is not normal. And you go, risk of over clearing is higher. That makes sense.
Yeah, because it's already kind of an abnormal like layout. Yeah. And it's like, I would think that most everybody coming in is just gonna be driving, so it would just look like the back of everybody's houses. Just, realistically, everybody's gonna be driving for the most part. A lot of people are gonna be driving.
I'd be
And then it's
interested.
a lot of I was
Oh,
just gonna say a lot of traffic flow for only alleys, and that's all I was gonna say.
I was just gonna say, I would be interested to understand how, from a safety aspect, how do like the fire department, how does this impact your accessibility? I'm not as familiar with alleys as I am with streets, so
It's a good question. You want to bring up fire?
that would be lovely.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Kearney. I'm a sergeant with the Fire Marshal's Office. In terms of the topic of alleys present considerable amount of tactical challenges for us. While they are not considered fire department access roads, we still need to get down them. If there was a car fire in a garage, then the garages are facing the alley. We still do have to access them. And without knowing the lengths of these alleys, that presents a pretty big challenge for us in terms of laying water supply, in terms of getting the first engine in to provide fire attack. So it provides challenges for sure.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Transit was
Sorry,
another
yeah, transit.
question, because it says, talking about, buses don't currently serve that area. Talking about pretty big impact on Atlanta Highway in that area if there's no public transportation. It says, it could be terminus for a new West Side terminus over there for transit or benefit from a proposed transfer station. The mall redevelopment, I'd be curious how that all plays into it.
Yeah, staff remind, is this the portion where it's 2 lanes on Atlanta Highway, right? Where it condenses down, or is it just before it condenses down? So it's 4 lanes here.
It's a good bit before.
Oh, it is.
The reduction in width happens after the turnoff on Business 78, past the Pepsi
It's right after,
warehouse.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Be curious if that becomes a requirement to at least investigate that further to that.
Any other comments for the applicant? So they would come back in the next meeting cycles or whenever they are ready to come back is the idea, right? Yeah. I would just add, I think it looks like just squeezing as many houses, properties in as possible without thinking about the design, honestly. This design makes me sad. And I don't think it's very Athens. So I know that we need housing, but one of my soapboxes is like, we can have good design and also have things be affordable. Like, just because it's affordable doesn't give us the right to have bad design. So that's my challenge to the developer, is come back with a plan that shows that this is about the residents and the experience of living in a neighborhood, not just in a cookie cutter place that just crams in as many properties as possible and sells them without building sidewalks. So.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Yes, Alec.
I just want to add one more thing too, and this is just my advantage of being on the future land use committee. We and this will be in my report, I won't jump on it much, but it does apply here to some things I've said, even than you said, and you said. The cost of building houses is huge, and I also know this from being on the oversight for educational SPOS for the school buildings. The Clark Middle building was written out 3 or 4 years ago as a $35 million project. It was $65 million for the same thing, maybe a little bigger, but so I know things like alleys and density are very important to the builders to be able to build inexpensive houses. So we're looking at issues, though, to be fair to the builder, they do want to pile in as many as they can for that pipe they just put in. That pipe costs the same thing no matter how many houses go onto it. At the same time, our job is not necessarily to expense out with them. So we have to figure out the same thing, but there is that tug of war that developers are having to battle right now. And if they have to put in an alley or they have to put in a sidewalk, it just may kill. They may have to build houses that are less affordable to do that. So I'm tossing that in just for the sake of us knowing that, but what I'm hearing as well.
I think we good. All right, we have some comments, so. All right, so now we'll go on to 290 South Lumpkin Street.
All right, back again. 290 South Lumpkin. The request here is to rezone the property from G, government, to commercial downtown in the West End design area. This also requires a change in our future land use map from government to downtown. This is a non-binding proposal for approximately 4 to 5 story mixed-use building, 200 to 220 multifamily units, 22,000 square feet of commercial, a 300 to 350 space parking deck, approximately 100 potentially public. These would be in 1 to 2 bedroom units, unlike say a 4-bed, 4-bath kind of unit that may only be suitable for students. 1 to 2 bedrooms can suit a variety of households, and that gives this building an opportunity to serve across multiple life cycles and serve a diverse clientele. A portion of the commercial space will serve as the new home of a student ministry, the BCM student ministry that is just down the street. They are in talks with UGA to swap that property. UGA would acquire that property and then let a private developer take over this property. Again, non-binding proposal. This is an aerial of the site as it currently exists. It was previously the home of some sort of antebellum style Greek fraternity houses, sorority houses, demolished perhaps over a decade ago. It's mostly just parking now. There's a hotel on this aerial, but that has been demolished as well. And there's a plan there for a new hotel, but currently the block is just parking and a lot of asphalt. This is our future land use map. The property would convert from the blue on the left, the government, to downtown on the right, which would match what the rest of the block is. This is the edge of downtown. This is where campus meets downtown. So it's very much compatible with the future land use to swap from a government future land use to a downtown commercial land use. You've got the university on the left side here, of course, North Campus. You've got university to the south, and you've got downtown to the north. Same thing with the zoning. You're swapping to from government to commercial downtown in the West End design area, which is what the rest of the block is already zoned for. This is a view of the property from Lumpkin Street. You can see it slopes uphill. You've got the university, North Campus on the right off frame. You've got downtown here at the top. And you can see this is parking. There was some landscaping here when the houses were there. And you've got a sidewalk there, of course, and a bike lane. This is the corner of the property at Lumpkin and Ray Street. You can see again, it slopes down in both directions. And then you have, this is the view from Ray Street. those trees would go away. And so with the parking, in exchange, you would get a building that, this is a survey of the site. There's no site plan. This is just a straight rezone. So the only requirement is to submit a survey. We've been in conversations with the applicant about elements of the design of the building to make sure that it can be done according to code without needing special exemptions or waivers. This is a rendering of what the building may look like. Again, non-binding proposal, but this is the rendering as you would see it from Ray Street. And then the student ministry would occupy this area of the commercial section. Then you'd have residential on top. You'd have commercial frontage along Lumpkin and Ray Street. Largely compatible with the 2023 comprehensive plan. We're increasing supply and the variety of housing. Like I said, it being a 1 to 2 bedroom arrangement gives it the opportunity to serve multiple types of households. It's on an infill location. This block currently doesn't have a lot of life on it. And so this would bring some vibrancy back to this block, which is our comprehensive plan calls for a vibrant downtown. And this would help complement that. It does potentially bring more vehicles downtown, which is not compatible with the comprehensive plan. There are some ways listed in the staff report that we can offset this, separating the rent of the unit from the rent for a parking space, making some of that parking available to the public, and just finding ways to more efficiently utilize the parking that's being provided. Some of that is required by code for the residents, but the parking we don't have a commercial parking minimum here. It's compatible with the future land use map, with the zoning map, and broadly compatible with the ordinance. Again, without a concept plan, we haven't reviewed it for detailed compliance, but if this were approved, it would come through our full plans review process. And like you said, we've had conversations with them to make sure that their project can be done without special waivers and exemptions. A couple of points to note. This would add a significant revenue generator to the tax base without adding more public infrastructure, which is a great deal for the fiscal health of the county. It also is in a location where we've got a high degree of multimodal transportation access. You don't need your car for every trip here. In fact, you may be able to park it there or not even bring one there in the first place because you can walk, you can bike, there's a lot of transit, and there's a lot of destinations nearby, particularly if you are attending or working for the university. This would be a very convenient spot to live. And so with that, staff is recommending approval of both the future land use and the zoning proposal. And that concludes the staff report.
Stephen, now we'll hear from the applicant.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Jeff Warwick, and I'm the owner of 450 Lumpkin currently. I'm in a long-term partnership with the Georgia Baptist Mission Board. And we have been working on a number of campuses across Georgia to revitalize their Baptist collegiate ministry program that's been in place on some of these campuses for over 100 years. This one's been in Athens since 1961, which is just a couple of years older than I am. And so we are folks who begin and end with the ministry. And so this has been a long-term partnership with us. We're very excited about what we're proposing here. We certainly appreciate you looking at it and giving it strong consideration. As Stephen said, we are also under contract with the Board of Regents for a land swap. And so we were approached by the university not too long ago, maybe a year ago now, that said what would be a really good outcome here is if we could unlock the landlocked Terry College. And so after a lot of consideration and discussion, we agreed to do that. So we've come to an agreement where 450 and 290 Lumpkin get swapped between me and the university. That allows for Terry to expand and do things that it needs to do. Terry's obviously a vital component, vital college to the University of Georgia. So we see that as a very mutually beneficial decision. This swap gives us a nice site, maybe a little larger site, a little bit better visibility, a little closer to downtown. We like all of those things for the BCM. So as I said, we begin and end with the ministry. And so what we're doing is we're taking a single-use building. And if you've seen 450 Lumpkin lately, it's a little tired. It's a little old. It needs some work. You really have to tear it down and start over if you really wanted to do something nice. And so despite that facility, they've done a tremendous ministry job for many, many years there. So what we are constructing here and planning on the UGA campus plus 4 other ones is really a new community where the BCM, the Baptist Collegiate Ministry, is the anchor and the hub of that community. And this one in particular, it's really a components of the BCM as the heart. There's some residential components to it, and then there's some level of commercial space, which I'll explain in a minute. The residential, as Stephen said, is purposely designed as 1 and 2 bedroom units. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 2 bedroom, 2 bath. It can function as student housing. It can function as faculty housing. It could be grad student housing. It could be market rate housing. It could be anything. But it's designed as a ministry community for that BCM. And so I've had a number of universities come to me and say, we really need on-campus faculty housing so we can accommodate that with the product type that we have. And that was designed originally 4 or 5 years ago when we started this program. So no quads, none of that here. It's purposely built 1 and 2 bedroom residences. And so again, designed around the BCM. This BCM right now is around 12,000 feet. It gets to use 15,000 feet or so. So it's a significant portion of what we sort of call the commercial space. It's really the BCM space. It's designed around the worship hall, which will seat around 500 people as it sits today, plus expansion out into a plaza. So we're very, very excited about that. And as Stephen said, the BCM fits along Ray and then wraps around the back along the Bensons. So we've been working in concert with the university on what they're doing for their student housing project on Ray and with the Benson family on what they're doing on the new hotel. And so we've all been working together on what's happening on Lumpkin, which has been a great partnership so far. But we are thrilled about what we're doing here, obviously. Excited about the ministry piece. As you can, Stephen said, there's a number of parking spaces in here that's designed primarily as residential parking. We don't see a lot of car traffic moving in and out of there just because it's students. We have some extra spaces that we can use as downtown public parking, which we plan to do. It's also designed as event space for the BCM. So if you have 500 seats, or if there's an event at the BCM on a Tuesday or Wednesday or Saturday, you're going to have a lot of people. Some of them may be riding bikes, they may be driving their cars. So we have that accommodation to allow that ministry to thrive. So we are thrilled about what we're doing. We think this works really well. We think it's a nice addition to Lumpkin. The design is not maximum density. We're not doing that on any of the campuses. We're trying to keep it minimized and a design that works with the aesthetic of what's going on. So I wanted to keep it short. I wanted everybody to know how excited we are, what we're doing from a ministry standpoint. We are long-term owners. And so I'm not a merchant developer from out of town coming in to do something. I'm here to be the catalyst to perpetuate this BCM ministry that's been here for 65 years. And so we're attempting to do that here and in other campuses across Georgia for another 100 years. And so that is our focus. That's our plan. And that's why we have this partnership with the Georgia Baptist Mission. Thank you.
Now, is there anybody who would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? All right, seeing none, we'll take it behind the rail. Comments, questions? Yes.
I think it makes perfect sense. The puzzle swap, it's exactly how it should be, or it's writing something that maybe wasn't so, I don't want to say was wrong, but just wasn't as right as it should have been. And I'll even just throw in, I mean, as they said in the Tom Cruise movie, you had me at yes, this had me already, but the applicant's explanation makes it even more of a solid, in my opinion, a solid decision.
Sarah?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval.
All right,
Two votes.
Yes, I wrote it down.
Second.
Yeah, so this would be a future land use change, which we would do first. All right, so
Yes.
Sarah would.
Yes.
Yes,
So my motion is to recommend approval for future land use.
okay,
Second.
a second, all right. Let's do a raise your hand. Well, no, we'll do a roll call, what the heck.
Motion to approve future land use, Garing,
Yes.
Laughlin,
Yes.
Pass,
Yes.
Sams,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
and Lord.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Motion to recommend approval of the zoning request.
Second.
Second, Mara, Alex, thank you. All right,
Anybody want to change their vote from the last time? Okay. We still need to take a vote. We need to take a vote.
yeah, I mean.
We're dealing with board rate.
Garing,
Yes.
Laughlin,
Yes.
Pass, Sams,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yeah.
Lord.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, guys. All right, next up. 615 Tallassee Road.
Evening. All right, so start with Lexington Acre and Spruiling located at 615 Tallassee Road. Has requested a special use permit to construct a 5-foot building for new classroom space to the right of the existing school building and playground area. The school is currently operating under a conditional use from 1988 in an RS15 zone. There was an approved administrative action from 2017 to amend the conditional use. It was approved for additional classroom building and minor site improvements, but was not constructed. As you can see here with the aerial, the surrounding area is either undeveloped or developed single-family and multifamily residential. Property is about 5 acres in total, with about 0.8 proposed acres in total being utilized if approved. The future land use map dictates the surrounding area as single-family residential. The special use request, daycare and schooling, is compatible with the future land use district. And so due to the compatibility, there's no request by the applicant to change the land use map for the special use permit. Additionally, the surrounding area is all zoned single-family or multi-family residential. So similarly to the future land use, there is no request to alter the zoning of the property. This is a picture to show the proposed location of the new building to the right of the existing play area. The current schoolhouse building is to the left off to the side. This is a site plan to show the entire parcel of the property with the, sorry, the green one. The proposed building right there and some minor site improvements here. A zoomed in picture for you. One staff comment is that the required front street park or sidewalk along the street frontage was not proposed in the site plan. One of the conditions is that would need to be constructed if approved. Architectural elevations for the building. Overall, staff finds this request compatible with the 2023 comprehensive plan with the specific emphasis on the encouragement to preserve existing structures and uses, as well as supporting workforce development by providing available childcare service to the surrounding area. Staff also finds the request compatible with the future land use and zoning map, as well as the surrounding residential character. Therefore, we recommend approval for the condition, with the condition being that street frontage sidewalk required by the zoning site standards is to be constructed.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Carter with Carter Engineering Consultants, 1010 Commerce Drive in Bogarts, and I'm representing with City School tonight. They have been there a long, long time. They do a really good job there at the school. As a matter of fact, I understand that there's been a school, a daycare there since the 80s, so it's been a long, long time. This building it's not a big, obviously not a big project. It's less than 3,000 square feet. It's adding roughly 18 to 30 possible students. So it's good for growth, but it's not a lot. So they're quality over quantity, and there's not a really load on the infrastructure here. It's pretty low key, basic, but it's very important for the school. And so I'll be brief tonight, and I'd like to introduce Sarah Cox to you, the head of school. I believe she's here, and Sarah, why don't you come up and just introduce yourself, and be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Hi, my name is Sarah Cox. I'm the head of school of Washika Learning Environment. We are a local Montessori school providing a holistic education for children ages 0 through 12 in the Athens community. We've been around for 31 years now, and we're just really grateful for your consideration, and we're really excited about this project.
Thank you. Is there anybody here to speak in favor of the proposal? Anybody to speak in opposition of the proposal? All right, seeing none. Take it over here. Any comments, questions? Motion? Sarah. Motion to approve with staff's condition. Okay. Second from Taylor. No more discussion. We'll do a roll call vote.
Motion to approve the staff condition, Gary,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Bass, Sams,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yeah.
Lloyd.
Yes.
Motion passes.
That roll in alphabetical order except for him. It's just.
Forgot about me and then Liz at the bottom, new guy.
Next time we do this, you're all just sitting in alphabet. All right, next up is 204 Old Hull Road.
So this request is a rezone from commercial general to mixed density residential. It's a type 1 rezone, so it would also require a change in the future land use from general business to mixed density residential. The request included a site plan. This would be a non-binding site plan, which included 16 detached units, cottage style development, with a maximum of 58 bedrooms with a mix of 3 to 4 bedroom units. All of the cottages, it's one row fronting Old Hull Road with parking in the rear and one access. This shows an aerial of the site. It's about 2.5 acres, currently wooded and undeveloped. Right in the center of some other multifamily apartment complexes off of Old Hull Road. This shows the future land use on the left. You'll see is currently general business and surrounded by other general business and mixed density residential. One thing to note is the general business designated parcel to the southwest is use of apartment multifamily residential, but still has a general business designation from the past. And the request is to change it from the general business to mixed density residential. For the zoning, the current existing commercial general zoning and the request to change it to mixed density residential. which would fit in with the mixed density residential zoning to the north and east, and the use of multifamily residential to the southwest, although that one is currently zone CG as well. This is the site plan that was included in the request, showing the cottages fronting Old Hull Road with one access point in the middle, the parking in the rear, from water facility to the east as it's downwards sloping site down to the east as well. And staff's overall recommendation, we find that the request is compatible with the 2023 comprehensive plan. It provides infill housing development to one undeveloped parcel that is surrounded by other multifamily developments. It adds to the housing supply and housing variety along Old Hull Road, where this proposal, although a non-binding plan, but this proposal is a cottage-style development, whereas the surrounding multifamily housing has a little larger apartment buildings. It allows the potential to complement a town center node along North Avenue, as was proposed in the growth concept map. Staff finds the request compatible with the future land use map, the zoning map, and the ordinance. So overall, staff approves both the future land use and the zoning request. And that concludes the staff.
Thank you. Now I'd like to hear from the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Frank Pittman with Pittman and Greer Engineering. We're at 1050 Barber Creek Drive in Watkinsville. As Samantha mentioned, this property is roughly 2.5 acres on Old Hull Road. It's zoned CG. It's been zoned for a long, long time, but it's completely surrounded by multifamily developments, most of which are RM2, except for the one that's to the south and west, which is multifamily, but still zoned CG. So this is dead in the center of a bunch of multifamily. The property, as things have developed and changed along that corridor, it really isn't viable as a commercial use on Old Hull Road. The plan would be to develop the property as cottage style housing, which would do two things: would increase the much needed housing. It would also provide a different type of housing along that corridor from what's there today. The utility department has looked at water and sewer, and there's availability for it out there. This project is a very low traffic generator. As Sam mentioned, the staff has recommended approval, and I'm here to ask for y'all's recommendation as well. Open to any questions. Thank you.
Is there anyone to speak in favor of this proposal? Or is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Okay, seeing none. Take it over here. Any questions, comments? And go ahead, Sarah. I don't want to jump in first.
I was just gonna say, this seems like a real no-brainer.
So
How did I feel that?
let me toss an idea in. Because it's a straight rezone. And for those of us who know Lucy Rowland, we always remember she always had a problem with straight rezones. And I'm wondering if there was a condition added to something like this that wasn't like a site plan, but was added a component of, like, I wrote down cottage style housing, like, and perhaps staff might have a better idea, but like some condition added to it that carried the intention of the development without binding a site plan that cannot be bound because it's not like up to engineering standards. So, you know what I mean? So I'm just kind of throwing it out there as like, it could be a condition added to a motion that then goes to the mayor and commission that helps cement that intent without getting into a situation where there's conversation about a site plan that shouldn't be bound. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. But I don't think it's right for this parcel. You know, it's a small parcel, it's not particularly unique. We'd like it to be one thing, but we have design standards that say what people are allowed to build. And, you know, adding different requirements to it. And it's also, this isn't a rezone to something crazy, right? Like it's a rezone from a defunct zoning to the zoning that is basically surrounding it. Adding conditions on to this particular rezone seems to me like unnecessary red tape. That's just my 2 cents. Alex.
She said what I was gonna say, so I'll support that. And it also just adds, what if they came up with a beautiful design that wasn't cottage style, and now we gotta go back to the original, so.
Well, that's, yeah, cottage style is what I wrote down, but it could be individual units or flexible, whatever. We have the applicant here, so I'm sure.
But I'm with you, a lot of times it's like,
But
why are we even looking at this? But I think on this property, I agree with what Sarah was saying.
so do I have a motion?
Motion to recommend approval.
All right.
To motion.
Yes. so
Motion to-
Future land use.
Yeah, motion to recommend approval of the future land use request.
All right. Sarah,
Second.
second from Mike. Let's do a roll call vote.
Gary,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Hess, Sands,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
and Lord.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion to recommend approval on the zoning request.
All right, motion from Sarah.
Motion second. Oh, okay.
Second from. All right, the other roll call vote.
Motion to approve the zoning. Gary,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Sands,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
and Lord.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, 1825, 1885, and 1889 Lexington Road.
All right, good evening, everyone. Special use before you all off of Lexington Road. Give me a click, Rich. So a special use in the CG zone airport overlay for multifamily in the airport overlay is the request that was filed. This application would need a second special use permit for approval of ground floor residential in a commercial zone. That was not part of the application and needs some further information for staff to be able to make some recommendations on that one. The proposal is for 144 units, a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms for a total of 228 beds. They also are proposing 252 parking spaces, mostly surface parking. There is some road network through this and connected to this that I'll show you. So that ends up being a few on-street parking spaces out of that calculation. They're proposing 4 buildings and a clubhouse with the main entry and exit off of Lexington Road, and then a secondary connection to Hollis Street, which is in the O'Kelly neighborhood. If any of you have been through that neighborhood, it's Mabry Drive, and O'Kelly is one of the streets and borders the airport. In the airport overlay, partially in 3 different areas, I'll show you that here in a second, has has some environmental areas to the rear of the property, as well as a bit of steep slopes going into the rear there. Sorry, that popped a little bit more when I was looking on the computer, but we've got 3 versions of the airport overlay here. You can see the outline of the property there, the kind of Y-shaped property, and then the 2 parcels to the east. So the 3 airport overlay zones are rather important because of the restrictions that they have on them. So up to the right is the runway protection zone. That's one of our strictest zones. To the upper to the left is the approach zone, which has a little bit more allowance, and you'll see the multifamily units go into that section a little bit. They stay out of the one to the upper right. But mostly this is housed in the transitional zone, which has further allowances and also some restrictions on it that this project will adhere to. So you can see here for the future land use, there is no proposed change. They have traditional neighborhood in the back and general business along Lexington Road, which is fairly common along this stretch of Lexington. You can see some employment there to the rear. We have some aging industrial facilities there to the rear. And in fact, that's also where the Firefly Trail runs up. That little sliver of road in the upper left-hand corner is Winterville Road there, if you all have been on the new section of the Firefly Trail. The zoning here is to change the 3 properties to a special use. Otherwise, everything else remains the same. We have a mix of zoning in this area, commercial along the corridor, RS5 to the O'Kelly neighborhood there to the east. One of the portion of the main property there and the one property that touches Hollis Street. And just so a little clearer here, Hollis Street's the connection right into there, is zoned RM1. We have some RM1 across the street and a little bit more down the corridor there. You all have seen a few applications to that effect recently with the Shady Brook development and probably the newest development out there, which is the Atlas Athens project and the new traffic light, which is a little bit to the east of this. This sits just to, I think it's just about 2/3 of a mile outside the loop off of Lexington, past the movie theater complex, and all of the roadwork that's going on out there these days. The environmental areas you see here are kind of along the edges. Some of the buffers of the environmental areas go onto the properties. Our environmental areas don't show the steep slopes, but I can show you a few retaining walls at the back of this property. If any of you were brave enough to get out there and walk, you can walk down Hollis Street. Part of Hollis Street is paved right up to the edge of this property. Not sure if any of you ventured much further into the property. It gets pretty dense back there with the vegetation. So here's a look down Lexington Road. We're looking towards town here on Lexington. You can see a little bit of the growth and some of the commercial activity that's adjacent to this property. Here's a look in from Lexington Road, or driveway into the property. This is actually a look from the end of Hollis Street back towards Lexington Road, just to give you an idea of some of the vegetation out there. And then we've got the site plan here. Just wanted to show you 2 things. You saw some of the airport overlay, but just the proximity there on the left-hand side, that's the inset map provided for this project off the western edge of the main runway that serves the bigger planes that come in and out of Athens-Ben Epps Airport. And then you can see the development. You can kind of see the airport overlay as indicated by the applicant. So that zone right here, and then the other secondary zone that changes up there. So we've got the 4 buildings and then the clubhouse. And then, as I mentioned, the street connection here to Hollis does have a little bit of that on-street parking there throughout. You can see the buildings pulled up to Lexington Road there, otherwise served by the on-site parking. Here is the architecture proposed for the clubhouse. And the apartments were fairly common in style, mostly 3-story walk-up style apartments. You can see some of the architectural treatment there proposed. So the second request for the special use permit for ground floor residential needs to be submitted for this project to be able to move forward. The application report alludes to using the inclusionary zoning policies that you all diligently looked at earlier this evening. A little bit more information is needed to be able to certify exactly how they're using the inclusionary zoning policy. There are some code compliance issues that are outlined in the staff report, some of which could require changes to the binding site plan or the binding application report. And then a little bit of conflicting information that staff needs some confirmation on between the plans and the application. There's some compatibility here with the 2023 comp plan. Opportunity to increase access to affordable housing along here. This project spoke in their application report about pursuing low-income tax housing credits, LIHTC credits, and also using the inclusionary zoning policy. It is prioritizing some infill along a corridor that we've seen lots of growth, and soon to have a brand newly constructed on-ramp to the loop. In terms of where it doesn't comply as much with the comprehensive plan, we would like to see a little bit more housing variety to be able to connect into what is mostly single family with some duplexes in the O'Kelly neighborhood, and also just provide more opportunities along Lexington Road. The comp plan, as you guys have heard us talk over and over again, often is referring to that. There is some non-compliance or asking to change the general business future land use, and without having the mixed use, that's more about the text of that language, that there's some things in there that we would need, that future land use asks for commercial and some streetscape improvements that staff has suggested in the application report. And again, that also follows along with not exactly complying with the zoning map in terms of the commercial. The multifamily obviously does, and then mentioning some of the ordinances in there. Staff is recommending 3 conditions if this is to move forward. Staff is recommending a table, but we wanted to propose these just in case. The airport has a requirement for this agreement and waiver of rights that is required to be filed. That the project submit the second special use permit for the ground floor residential in a commercial zone, and also to include an easement along Lexington Road where the Greenway Network Plan is proposing a future multi-use trail on that side of Lexington Road. So staff is recommending table at this time, and that concludes the staff's report.
Thank you. So I'd like to hear from the applicant, but my understanding is that, oh, great, public comment.
Applicant first.
Yeah, that's what I thought, applicant first.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, I was like, have I been doing it right the whole time? No, I'd like to hear from the applicant.
Good evening. I am Jeff Carter with Carter Engineering Consultants, 1010 Commerce Drive in Bogart, Georgia. I think that the request may not have been as clear as we wanted it to be. So I do have a handout that I would like to present to you guys, just a brief handout that clarifies what we are asking for. If I can pass this out, is this okay?
So to enter that in the public record, we're gonna have to take a vote to make that part of the public record. So if y'all want to do the handouts, just procedurally, we have to do a motion and a vote on accepting it into the documents tonight. Make a motion to accept, okay?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Thank you. I think I've got enough for everybody here. You want?
I'd like one.
Okay.
Okay.
Got an extra one.
All right, everybody got one? Okay, great. So I wanted to clarify, there's 2 things that we're asking for on this project, okay? There's a little bit of miscommunication with staff in terms of the second special use permit. We were told we could handle it under 1 special use permit, but apparently we're talking about 2 now. But I wanted to tell you that there's 2 requests here. Number 1, the request is to allow a multifamily development within the airport overlay district. All right, that's the cleaner of the 2 requests. We've been to the airport authority. They've reviewed this project and they're happy with it. There was no issues or no problems that we saw through that process. So I wanted to report to you that they absolutely have approved this project. And I think staff can verify that for us. The second request is to allow ground floor residential in the commercial general zone. And this request is needed for at least four different reasons. First of all, this project is an airport overlay, as I mentioned, and the height of the apartment buildings are limited because it's in the airport overlay. So what's happening is it's reducing the density, okay? And so we've got to get that density somewhere. And so the logical place to do it is in the commercial component, all right? This is 100%, by the way, affordable housing, okay? 100% affordable housing. The second reason is the dimensions of the parcel don't lend itself to commercial use. If you notice, this is a very unusual shaped piece of property. There's very little road frontage here. As a matter of fact, when the total frontage is only 250 feet. When you take the curb cut, you take the access out of the equation, it's only 166 feet. So it really doesn't lend itself for commercial space. There's a really high probability that a commercial vendor, a commercial business would not want to come here because visibility is very, very small. So you have the practical component of cars coming in and out, and you have very little possibility of having commercial there. The third reason is the visibility from the main road that commercial space needs is limited, as I stated, because of the property width. And we all know if you can't see it, they're not gonna come. The fourth reason is that it's really not practical from an economic standpoint. So if you think about like a student housing, for example, I've got two kids at the University of Georgia. I know rent is very, very, very high on those. There's more margins to do things like ground floor commercial. But when you're doing 100% affordable housing project, there's not a whole lot of margins there to put commercial space there. And so I think that's a very important component of this. So we feel it's plausible. It's a very good reason to allow us to do that ground floor residential. So I wanted to summarize that for you on the second page. If you flip over on the second page, there is code compliance issues that staff noted in their report, okay? And that's in the black letters. and the red, we just wrote our response, okay? All of these code compliance issues we're fine with. We have no problems whatsoever with them. I'm not going to go through each one of these just for the sake of time, but I'll be glad to respond and try to answer any of the questions that you might have on that. And then the last sheet shows the inclusionary incentives, the bonus calculations that we arrived at by doing 100% of the affordable housing. So, and I will tell you that the worst possible case scenario for us tonight is to be tabled, okay? And I know you hear that, you may hear that from developers, they've got to go. This one, because of grants, because of the housing authority, because of a lot of issues, we actually would rather have a recommend of denial than to have it tabled. So I would appreciate it if you would factor that into your decision. Of course, we feel like that Athens really needs affordable housing, okay? This is the second project. Virgin Held is the developer here, and they came before you a couple of years ago and got Athens Flats approved, and it's currently under construction. I don't know if you guys have seen that yet. It's behind the old Hull Road behind the Kroger, and that's currently under construction. So this is the second project they've done in Athens, and they're very good. It's a very quality development. We're not asking for any variances here. We're not asking for any special treatment here. We're just asking for this project to be able to move forward with affordable housing, and that's what this is about. So we'd appreciate your support. Sam Rogers with Virgin Held is the developer, and he's here tonight. And I've asked him to come up for the remainder of my time and talk a little bit about his vision for this property.
Good evening, Sam Rogers, Virgin Held. First and foremost, thank you so much for your time this evening. It's nice to be back in front of this group. As Jeff kind of stated, we were here a couple of years ago when we were in front of this commission for Athens Flats, which is a 192 unit, 100% affordable development that was actually funded by the Georgia Department of Community Affairs 2 years ago. It's 100% affordable. Like I said, to those people that are making below the 6% AMI, and our intent is to do the same thing here with Lexington Flats. This is a partnership between ourselves, Tapestry Development, which is a nonprofit developer that's based out of the Georgia, Atlanta area, as well as the Athens Housing Authority, which is also a co-owner and partner in this development as well. And so the real reason that we cannot have this table tonight is because on October 4th, our application for tax credits and tax exempt bonding through DCA is actually due. And as part of that actual threshold requirement, we have to have our zoning in place. So to Jeff's point, a denial is much, much better than a table, because otherwise we run the risk of not bringing 144 more affordable housing units to Athens. Just some general comments on the development itself. It is 144 units, a combination of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. All of them are affordable. So one of the components we are going to be adding in is actually a solar component, which the power that will be generated from that will basically go to take care of all the electricity needs in the actual development itself. So which means our residents will have no actual utility costs. It'll all just come right through the building and right through the solar panels. In a general sense, like I said, October 4th is our application date. We should find out sometime after the first of the year if we are awarded the bonds and the tax credits, and then we would hopefully start construction if we're awarded sometime at the end of 2025. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and of course, I thank everybody for their time. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody here to speak in favor of the proposal? Or to speak in opposition to the proposal? Okay. All right, questions, comments? Sarah, yes.
I have a question for staff about the special use, about the handling of special use permits 2 at a time or needing one or the other. So the ground floor commercial. Is that usually handled by 2 separate special use requests?
So it is rare that we have 2 issues simultaneously that require special use approval. The answer on this is 1 application would suffice with the 2 requests enumerated. So it wouldn't have to have 2 separate agenda items, 2 separate application packets. We wouldn't require that. So 1 application is sufficient with the reasoning for the special use request enumerated in it. So that's what we were working on, and that's what you're reading in the staff report.
So is part of the problem here today that, so I know that we're getting some reasoning in this supplementary analysis for the commercial, ground floor commercial. Is the issue that staff did not have this in enough time to look at it, consider it in y'all's report?
Yeah, so it was not a part of that original submittal, so it wasn't a part of our initial analysis, long and short of it. Staff did have the opportunity to talk with the applicant about the content that was going to be prepared and distributed to you tonight. I think we understand the rationale that they're presenting here. With request number 2, I can't tell you that we've done the full complement of analysis that we would normally do. The 4 standards do approximate the special use criteria. They kind of summarize them. They do collapse them. I think the applicant's making a compelling case with what they're saying here with this location. But I don't want to understate the fact that we would have committed something in the staff report to responding to these things. But I think we understand what they're presenting here tonight. The applicant did come forward in good faith and ask how to do this tonight, how to present this information to you all to consider it. We did provide guidance that if it could be represented in something relatively brief, so that it was consumable on the floor of the meeting, then it was probably in order for them to come and bring it and present it. So I think that's what you saw. As far as responding to the code compliance issues, this is super helpful. This is the kind of thing that when we have other types of reviews, this is the kind of content we would get. And then the other comment that we had that was in our staff report was just the math of the units and how did inclusionary zoning factor in. So I think the 3rd page, my standpoint, addresses that.
Okay. And for the code compliance issues, is this a situation like we sometimes see where someone submits plans that are not binding? These are not binding plans, right? They are binding plans.
Special use, binding plans, binding report.
Okay.
Yep.
the special use finding plan relationship always gets me. Okay. Thank you.
I think the two special uses. I just want to add to that. But one thing I think is interesting about the ground floor commercial in this case, because like to the right, what is that, to the east, you have single family houses, like single family duplex behind there. And then to the west, it's like commercial. So it's an interesting transition. It's also an interesting question of like how Lexington Road is sort of evolving. You know, those single family homes were what, from the 70s maybe, like they started. Yeah, so it's an interesting just look at Lexington Road and its changes. But anyway, go ahead, Alex. Yes.
So if this is tabled, it does not go forward to the mayor and commission, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and if it is denied, it still goes to the mayor and commission.
With that recommendation, yes.
So that's the need for this to not be tabled according to the applicant. And then, so when is the next mayor, when is their voting meeting first? Pardon?
October
It is
1st.
October 1st, okay. The 4th just had me, did anybody look and see when they were gonna vote? It may all be moot at this point if they're not getting. Okay, that's all I need.
Additional question, I'm sorry. So for the code compliance issue such as, the play area for children being required, the applicant's response is that the area will be provided, but it is not currently in the plan. So would the applicant then would it be like, okay, by the time you get to the mayor and commission, it has to have the play area for children?
So because we procedurally aren't able to make changes to the site plan between planning commission and mayor and commission. That's why this document being entered in the record is important. So having that statement here now becomes part of the application, and moving forward, if this were to be approved with this document, we would be working administratively to locate that playground within that plan without moving parking, without moving buildings, without moving the other things that are depicted there that are now binding. Yeah.
And if they couldn't make that work, then the whole thing would just not happen.
Well, there'd have to be some sort of amendment to the plan, and we'd have to work through that process to be able to do it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Question for staff, is there information provided in what we just got that would have changed the recommendations at all, or would you like more time to digest it? Because I've been paying attention to where everybody's been saying, so I haven't really read this yet, so I was wondering if staff had a chance to digest what's in there fully.
Well, and I'll say this, as far as taking time to digest things, that's certainly in your purview. You've set aside a set amount of time to read it if you feel so inclined. From a staff standpoint and knowing what we know from our conversation earlier today, I think the rationale they're presenting is certainly market-based. They are addressing something predominantly that's driven by the product that they're working to finance and build. There is a physical constraint that they did mention that I think is compelling with regard to the airport and the height restriction, and that trying to put affordable units in something where you have a cap on your building height is a challenge. And I think it's a hardship that probably holds a lot of weight. To the extent that it addresses the full complement of all the special use criteria, I can't sit here and tell you right now that it does, but I think it is an appropriate point to make. And certainly would have been factored in staff's review if it had been a part of that from the beginning. There are questions here about design speed of Lexington Road, narrow frontage, how to get a car safely in and out for high turnover commercial traffic as opposed to one trip in, one trip out, typically for residential traffic. The nature of it's different. We certainly aren't looking for commercial traffic to backtrack through an established neighborhood. And that may actually be the safest way out at times, given the flows that occur on Lexington Road. So I think there are aspects of this that have merit, and they are better addressed in what was handed out tonight.
Are there any big questions that are still looming for staff, or has it kind of been addressed?
Stephen and Mark are just kind of looking. I would say no. I don't think there are any huge questions here. I think this was more of a procedural issue.
Okay.
And I certainly appreciate this information that we have. But I want to reiterate, if the planning commission needs to take time to digest it, do that.
That's something y'all want to take a couple minutes just to through the pages that we just got. That's cool, man, like. Or we could ask more questions, or you can make a motion, whatever you want.
Everything I read seemed to address questions in there. Obviously, we're not getting the details of how those are trees that we've provided. We don't know what these trees are, things like that. But
Sorry, say that again?
they're getting the specific details on street trees that we provided or where and what, things like that, but.
Right, because some of these things will be taken care of through the plans review process.
Right, okay, gotcha.
Yes, Sarah.
I have a question for the applicant.
Okay.
Bring up the ground floor commercial, ground floor residential. So are you are looking for zero commercial?
Correct. Be replaced with the residential.
Yeah, and okay. And what is the code requirement, is there a percentage or does it all have to be commercial under code?
So the code requirement reads that you cannot have residential on the ground floor.
Okay.
And then 50% leasable commercial space, with the balance being back of house or parking or that type of thing.
That's for the commercial. This is split zones.
Good point. Thank you.
The ground floor commercial would only be in like the very front buildings.
Screens where it's red.
Yeah, where it's red, that's where it would be.
But one of the things I'll point out, where you see these bands of sort of relatively uniform depth in commercial zoning where parcels are split zone, those are holdovers from zoning actions from 70s, 80s, 90s, where there was a uniform, that was a policy, that was a land use approach. I can tell you over the years on this section of the corridor, the thought was that if this is going to develop commercially, it will be recombined with the adjacent parcels to be able to make it work. So in this instance, we have the parcel not being recombined. And so just some historical perspective on how this corridor in that commercial zoning was envisioned was that frontage at that depth on its own was probably not sufficient to have something that was developable for commercial. You would need the parcels either side folded into it to make it work.
Other questions, comments? I feel like making a motion. Alex?
I mean, in general, it looks like the right thing to do there. I've driven up and down that corridor a million times and I dread it every time until they finish the loop. Or the, whatever you call that, is god awful. It's showing sign of improvement, but once you squeeze through that, like a ketchup bottle, you get out, go, and the residential idea there is fits. It feels fine. It's already kind of around there. My only thing is, are we missing anything? That's the new information. So there's my caution, and it's that's really all I can say on that. I just want to make sure we're all looking for anything that's gonna make staff or the mayor and commissioner, everybody go, what? So, but I'm not seeing anything that grabs me. I'm very good with the, not to mumble on, but the commercial thing, that's an easy one for me. It doesn't need to care. It would only make things worse for what they're trying to do.
One question, did they mention anything about the easement? For future multi-use trail?
So like the Greenway?
Yeah,
There was something along Lexington Road, is that what you meant?
it was mentioned.
I remember
Maybe
mentioning.
the applicant can answer that. Is there something about the connection to the
Yeah.
Greenway?
I believe that's a condition in the staff report. And so we're, I mean, that's right.
Thank you. That's all I have. It's affordable housing. Plan.
Anybody wanna suggest a motion?
Also just motion to approve.
So we have an option. There's some staff, there's some conditions that.
Just want to make sure there's a staff recommended condition.
Okay.
Part of your motion, and then we could have discussion.
Can I change that
You can
then?
amend your motion.
Can I do approve with conditions?
Recommend approval with the staff conditions.
The other point of discussion procedurally is probably, this has already been entered into the record, but you may want to make this a part of the condition of approval,
Right, yeah.
align with the responses provided by the applicant at the meeting tonight. And we could probably, just taking a page out of hearing board, give this a name. Exhibit one.
And the way we kind of be, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I know, just feel like with staff's conditions and the,
One.
And consistent with the information provided in exhibit one.
right.
Yeah, especially since it's new information, you know?
That makes
Okay.
sense.
All right, so
Two conditions.
motion to approve with,
I'm sorry, plus the airport ones. I'm getting lost myself. So four. Those three plus exhibit one.
okay.
Yes.
Motion to approve with staff recommend conditions and exhibit one. Is that
Oh, okay. I'm gonna slow down. So recommended condition number one. Yes, that would need to be a part of the motion. This handout addresses number two.
Right.
And then the third one would be another condition. So maybe we're talking three conditions. Am I doing the math right, everybody?
Yeah, because
Sounds
number
right.
two isn't a condition.
No. So it's not. So it would be condition number one is worded on the screen and in the report. Condition number three is on the screen, plus the last condition about receiving exhibit one and
The issues addressed in exhibit one.
addressing the issues, that were outlined in the exhibit.
But does that have to be an amendment to the motion?
I think we can probably,
Second it.
he can amend, and when he can, if he agrees, can second the amended motion. How about that?
motion to approve with condition one and three? And then the information contained in exhibit one? Did I do it right? Still, I'll take it.
Second.
Right. Any other comments? Otherwise, we'll do a roll call vote.
Is to approve with conditions. Gary?
No.
McLaughlin?
Yes.
Pass?
Yes.
Sams?
Yes.
Sanders?
Yeah.
And Lord?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. 1140 Martin Luther King Junior Parkway. Wait, did we have two votes for the last?
No, we did not.
Oh, okay.
It was a type one.
Oh,
It's an airport.
that's,
But
yeah.
it's not, you're fine.
All right. I am pinch hitting on this one tonight, so I apologize. I'll let Ed correct anything I say incorrectly here. So we've got a planned development at 1140 Dr. MLK Junior Parkway. So they're looking to rezone from RS8 to CG and RM1, Commercial General and Mixed Density Residential 1 with a planned development designation. They would also require to change the future land use from traditional neighborhood to traditional neighborhood and general business. They're proposing 5 townhomes along with a multi-tenant convenience store and gas pumps on a 4.62 acre parcel. The multi-tenant convenience store is proposed to be 10,000 square feet with 10 pumps and 33 parking spaces. There is currently a pond on the property that would be removed and reconstructed for stormwater management. Sidewalk connections along MLK and Conrad, as well as a proposed path to the Bridgewater neighborhood that is to the east of this community. There are 3 waivers proposed, as you see in your staff report, 2 of which staff does not support regarding trash storage and tree canopy. Staff would need more information on the maximum building heights from 30 feet request. So you can see the aerial here. We are just on the south side of Loop 10 at the 441 College Street MLK exit. If you're coming off the loop there. Some of you may have passed by this parcel and seen the pond that's there. It's been rather prominent for years. There's 2 residential structures on the property currently. Across the street from a auto repair shop and a restaurant. Abutting some residential along with the Bridgewater neighborhood, you can see there to the east. North of the loop is mostly commercial at that point as well. So the future land use is currently traditional neighborhood. They're looking to maintain their traditional neighborhood in the portion they would like to keep the townhomes on the southern portion of the site, and then change the bulk of the site to general business. You can see there the other corners around the loop interchange are mostly general business as well. And then the traditional neighborhood use is to the south of this property on that side of the street and to the east. The greenway is just a little bit over to the left. Seems to be a feature of the cases this evening here. So RS8 zoning currently looking to go to CG and RM1. Again, fairly consistent with the future land use with the CG zones at the 4 corners of this intersection off the loop. And then the residential single family to the east, and then just a little bit south of that, residential mixed density. So here's a shot looking towards the loop in the front of the property. Large amount of frontage along the front of this property. You can see there going northbound towards the loop. Here's the repair shop and the restaurant across the street. Must have been lunchtime. Here is the house that is on site. There's a second residential structure on site as well, and a driveway you can see there. Just want to point out, if people have kind of breezed by here getting on the loop or going up 441, topo change, you can kind of see there that the topography rises fairly substantially. Certainly a factor in our question about the 3rd waiver there on building height for the townhomes. Here's looking back into the site, if that helps a little bit more. You can see through all the kudzu. And then here is looking down Conrad, so you can see the drop. That would be the restaurant right across the street that you can look over the top of from this. About 20 feet of elevation gained going up Conrad to what would be the eastern edge of this property behind where that picture was taken. Here's the site plan showing two entrances onto MLK, approaching the loop. One is a right out only, one would be right in, right out. Then they would have the one entrance off of Conrad that would feed into the commercial area and then also to the rear of the 5 proposed townhomes. This would be the path they would like to construct to connect to Bridgewater neighborhood. And then that waiver about the trash storage, staff is suggesting if they flip the building and the seating area, the seating would be away from the loop and more towards the residential structure down here. And then that would provide an opportunity for the trash to be slid back along that side of the building possibly. Here is a proposed elevation for the multi-tenant shop with the convenience store in it. Here is proposed elevations for the townhomes. So staff finds this to be somewhat compatible with the comprehensive plan, adds a little bit of infill housing on a unique site, not too far away from downtown, University of Georgia and the Greenway Trail, as well as transit connections there, jumping onto the loop. Compatible with the future land use map, you can see there in the zoning map, lines up pretty well with the commercial properties and then the residential properties to the south and the rear. There are some code compliance and technical issues needing resolution. And as mentioned, staff is not supportive of 2 of the waivers and needs info on 1 more. This is just for comments only tonight, and that concludes the staff's report.
Thank you. Now can we hear from the applicant?
Good evening. I'm Ed Lane with SPG Planners and Engineers at 1725 Electric Avenue, speaking on behalf of the project. I believe we're at last item on the agenda. We've been here late and I think there's others to speak, so I'll try to be as brief as I can. With the overall comprehensive plan goal of trying to redevelop or develop infill parcels, this project presents an interesting case because it's 4.6 acres. But it's kind of a difficult site being that close to the bypass interchange. But it also provides an opportunity to try to see how can even these parcels be redeveloped to their highest and best use to benefit the community. So one thing, because of its location near the interchange, a challenge for redeveloping this site, whether our application or any, would be how to handle traffic. And so I want to begin with that first. If we could go to the next slide. And I apologize, this is very small for y'all to read, but I'll mention these numbers here. So this is from the DOT traffic counts. And what I wanted to show here is the interchange is busy, but MLK Drive has 5,900 daily trips. Whereas when you get to the north side on Commerce Drive, it jumps up to 13,000. So most of that traffic is really congested heading north, not necessarily on MLK. For a little bit of a context of what that's like, Chase Street with the school and all the businesses there is about 10,000, daily trips. And so let's see here. So nevertheless, it's still a busy interchange as people are getting on and off the loop there. Let's see, do I need to point it somewhere specific? It's not working, Steve.
Rachel, can you advance it?
It's not a PowerPoint.
Thank you. So we can see here, even though this project did not generate the projected trip generations that would trigger a full traffic study, we went ahead and did a full traffic study and a crash analysis, just knowing that is likely going to be something we need to understand better. And so on your left here, this chart, the level of service chart that we use in traffic engineering that essentially measures like how much is your delay. There's several existing level of service Fs. And so any redevelopment, including ours, we certainly don't make that any better. You can see it increases, like that's measured in vehicle seconds a vehicle is delayed. So some of those go from 62 to 63 and 90 to 102. And so it is creating additional delay, but it's not triggering an existing condition that's deemed acceptable to unacceptable, which would be a level F. So, and we're discussing this with ACC transportation engineers to kind of make sure they're comfortable with these numbers and that it works with the signal there. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the crash analysis that I'll just summarize. So this are the last 5 years, all of the accidents that have happened in the subject area. And we analyzed the area kind of south of the bypass. And there were, in 5 years, 21 accidents. 9 of those had injuries, and there were no fatalities, thankfully. But that's how many in 5 years there were 21 accidents, and the majority occurred at Conrad Drive, either by an angle hit or being rear-ended. And so, next slide, please. So one thing we're working with ACC to see how that particular intersection could be improved and made safer. And this project, the redevelopment of this parcel, would help facilitate that. So some of the options that have been discussed is, number one, kind of channelizing that through striping in bollards, rollover bollards that would help direct that car to a vantage point where they can better assess traffic in both directions. Number two, this is probably the biggest, is striping that center yellow striped lane into a dedicated left turn lane. It appears from the crash analysis that there can be a lot of misinterpretation of what driver movements are going to happen because there's not a dedicated lane. And then someone ends up pulling out and then they hit each other. The third is kind of improving sight visibility on the shoulder there, kind of cutting. It's really a maintenance item there, but this project would help kickstart that. And fourth would be, this would require cooperation, of course, with the Plantation Buffet, which our team has sat down with just as a good neighbor to try to see how they feel about all of this. But would be kind of just redirecting their curb cut to align at that intersection so everyone is able to make those decisions. The drivers can make the decision knowing what everyone else is doing. So those are some of the improvements we think that can be made there to make this safer than it is today. Next slide, please. So with the remaining time, I won't go into all the items that staff had noted, but I believe we can work through almost all of those. I have this up here just to show, we were pursuing a PD, so we were assuming the latitude of having some waivers. We did look at a lot of different configurations, moving the dumpster. The reason we flipped the building that side is that trail coming this way would have an extra 10 feet of elevation to have to climb. And so we wanted to direct the path that way and towards the greenway. But we can certainly move these around. What you see here, where we show flipping the building 90 degrees and moving it closer to the road, would eliminate a lot of the waivers and technical issues that were mentioned. And what you see in red would be, this is why we didn't do this. This would be how we could create these very funky parcels to all of a sudden satisfy the tree ordinance. We were trying not to play any funny games, and we were just like, look, here's how you would split these parcels up as a land planner. And I know that some of the canopy is over there because we're developing, this all together. But either way, we can resolve that one way and can work through that. Regarding the fire department comment, Conrad Drive is a public street, and we're putting 2 to 3 story townhomes on Conrad. And then there's a 20-foot drive on the rear. We will have to coordinate with them still after getting the comment for sure to understand what else they need to see. But it just didn't occur to us. We thought that was a fairly standard configuration that would be safe and accessible, but we will work with them to make sure we get that right. And then really, I'll just end on this, is that I think for kind of a tricky parcel like this, what's being proposed, I think really adds a lot of, benefit to the community. If you could go to the last slide, please. It's kind of unusual on how all these things can kind of connect, and it brings a lot of value, including improving some existing substandard infrastructure, but not really any new public infrastructure, and just retrofitting it to make it a more contributing parcel, as well as these benefits that were enumerated in the report and summarizing here. But I'll conclude with that. I'm here to answer any questions, as well as the developer and some of the development team. Thank you all for your time.
Yeah. Now, is there anybody here to speak in favor of the proposal? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition of the proposal? Hold up.
Hi, I'm not a very good public speaker, but doing this. My name is Christy Schroeder and I live on Conrad Drive. I live within 400 feet of this development. That's my house at the bottom of the screen, actually. My biggest concern in all of this is that I feel like our neighborhood as a neighborhood has been sidelined in favor of development all around us. Bridgewater's been there for a long time. It's been there longer than I've lived here. But I think that was sort of the beginning of pushing our neighborhood into this position where we're walled in on all sides. Ruth Street just has this, I'm sure you were aware of the development on Ruth Street, and all of its ups and downs, the flooding, the mud, the greenway being messed up, like that mud came down towards Conrad all the way down MLK. And, you know, I have to choose which way am I gonna go to get out of my neighborhood, depending on the time of day, which is normal, that's just traffic, whatever. But sometimes you can't get down Ruth Street and you can't get off Conrad. So how do I get out of my neighborhood? And I don't understand how adding a gas station with all this in and out traffic and more townhouses, which, you know, there's those newer houses that were built recently, add so much congestion to the end of Conrad Drive that I can't even get my car down the street because people are double parked sometimes so far out away from the street that it's like you're going down a hill, and that picture doesn't do it justice. It is a steep hill. You're going down a hill and there's somebody tearing up the hill so they don't get rear-ended on MLK. They're tearing up the hill. I'm trying to come down the hill. People are constantly like, you know, like there's just no consideration for what already exists. And I feel like, you know, as a homeowner now, I think about these things and I think about, this is like my one thing I have. I'm a single mother. I worked really hard for this. It's really important to me. It's my one asset. It might be the only asset I ever have. And I love my neighborhood and I want to be proud of it. And I just don't feel like this adds to that. Yeah, I mean, yes, the pond is beautiful. It's lovely. It's full of geese. I know that's not exactly something people care about a ton. But I just hope that you all can consider the people that are already there and the needs that we have. A sidewalk would be nice, but less chaos would be the best.
Anybody else? And the applicant does have an opportunity to anything to rebut or anything, but I don't know if that's something you want to do, but the opportunity is there. All right, well, if there's nothing else, take it behind the rep. Comments, questions?
Like anything, I'm always interested in anything that has to do with ponds and streams and stuff, so I guess I got a question for staff about if the stream, you said it's not currently an environmental zone, so there's no creeks going into it or out of it, is it just mostly stormwater that fills that up then? Okay, and where does that stormwater come from? Just.
Some of it is runoff from the loop, some of it is runoff from the right of way of MLK. Yeah, it has no obvious signs of inflow or outflow. And it doesn't really have anything that we're aware of. We don't know, maybe the applicant is aware of the ground source. And the way our ordinance reads, just if you're going this way, impoundments, ponds, lakes like that, that don't have a stream in or stream out, it would be the stream in or stream out that has the buffer. The actual impoundment itself only has state water buffer of 25 feet. Our local ordinance does not put the 75-foot or greater around ponds.
Around a man-made pond, right? It just protects the natural streams and rivers. Okay. And I guess any stormwater plan on this property would mitigate those basically that have to have their own stormwater management on site to take care of all that that's going into the pond now. And it would go into a retention pond that they have or whatever their solution is. So that stormwater runoff's not gonna be an issue, basically. From the pond being moved.
You want to ask the applicant?
Well, now I was just curious if, in terms of just if they follow normal stormwater procedures.
Still have to design for it.
They'll have to design for it, yeah. Okay, that was my question.
Usually at this stage, that kind of detailed engineering isn't done. So what you see on the binding plan is a set aside, an approximation of the area where that facility will go. And then the final design fits inside that envelope.
Alex?
So it was mentioned by the applicant about working with the county to do a center lane or to turn the stripe lane into a turning lane. Is that correct? Okay, and actually, can come up? I don't know if the chair needs to ask that or not. I need that trouble with it on that. Okay, so you mentioned turning that stripe lane into a turning lane.
Right.
And I think you mentioned that's where if you're coming out of the convenience store going left, you could pop out onto that and then get into the driving lane? Or did I just, my brain may have taken that and said that for you?
Not just the convenience store, it would be, the existing pavement is wide enough there right now to where instead of 2 lanes and then just striped in the middle, it could be restriped to include a dedicated left turn lane that's, kind of.
Yeah, coming from north, taking a left into the project.
Into Conrad and the project, yes.
Right.
That's right.
So it would be a left turn only.
Yep.
Not one of those center lanes that does the right or left.
Let's correct, the striping then changes closer to the interchange though. And so it would be striped, but yes, no shared center turn lane.
Okay, all right, because that can get confusing.
Oh, yeah,
That's right. Okay. But I will say, you can go ahead and sit down now. When I go in and out of there, that map was corrected. It is heavy traffic and then it stops being heavy traffic once it goes in, coming off of 441 or whatever. It definitely changes the number of drivers. At least that's what my unsophisticated count says as I drive through there.
I have a couple comments, and Ed, if you want to come back, because I have some questions about topography. And maybe this is something when you come back, because, so the property clearly has a change across it. So if I were to be standing, like, I guess I'm just not understanding where the townhouses are in relation to the rest of the property and like where they're sitting versus the roads and all that.
Sure. I think I can explain. So when you come off of MLK, Conrad is steep, it rises up. And so our thinking was that we pull the drive off for those townhomes before the grade is too far up where that drive connection just would not be possible. And so then we were hoping to take advantage of that elevation change to have where those townhomes would have, park under garages essentially. So you kind of drive behind and now you're lower, but that first floor of the townhome would face Conrad. And they would kind of have to be stair stepped.
So you'd like cut into the hill a little bit to get that, that garage area and then build on top of that.
That's right. Yeah. And so then, right, the back of those units then is, much lower elevation than the front, that faces Conrad.
And then there would be a sidewalk along that street too, in front of the townhomes?
Yes, that is, a requirement of the code. So there's a sidewalk proposed along the frontage.
And then as far as the MLK improvements go, is that something that the developer is taking on or the city's taking on? How does that work?
The development
Okay,
would,
they would pay for the improvements for that part of the street.
correct. I mean, we would work with the city to make sure they approve of it and meet their standards, but it would be kind of a part of the project.
I have a question while you're up here, actually. If I could. And just going off of the changing of striping and, we had a neighbor who was saying that their concerns was, turning in and out of Conrad there. Do you think that the changes in the striping and the road there will help improve that situation? Turning from Conrad onto MLK, perhaps?
Yes, yeah, I mean, all those crashes happened there over 5 years, the 20 crashes. So, and as we showed in that one, I mean, there's things we can do to improve that. So both our traffic engineer and Tim Griffith with the ACC, we were talking through that together. And I think they needed some more info. They wanted us to rerun some of our numbers. But Tim's and the traffic engineer's instinct was that absolutely that those things would help improve that.
So it could be an improvement over the current conditions rather than kind of adding more traffic problems.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Comments or things you want to see, want to come back the next time or?
I don't know if we need another gas station, but if we do, it's a reasonable place to put it. The infill housing is nice. We did, I don't know if the developer sees these, we did get a lot of comments, written comments from people living nearby, stating their opposition to this. So, seems like might be a good idea to try to reach out to folks. Based on the history of what I've seen when a lot of people come out to disagree with the proposal. I do hope that those folks get a chance to see these safety improvements that you're proposing to Conrad Drive. I thought the crash analysis was really well done and demonstrated a real benefit to the neighbors, in addition to just like having a store and walking distance. So yeah, I hope that word gets out about that and people are able to digest it and think about it more. Doesn't seem like doesn't seem like a bad project altogether.
All right, thanks, Sean. All right, thank you. All right, so now we're on to other business. There is no vice chair report, so other than that, town, so that's why I'm here. Future land use steering committee report?
Yes. We had another nice meeting. Again, we meet monthly. And this time we met, our topic is housing. That was earlier, well, that was in August. And we had builders, we had a bank owning for these projects. We had land planner, management companies. And one thing we're learning, we're kind of hearing some of the troubles that they're dealing with. And one of those was the fact that it costs so much to build right now. And so that's hurting building anything. And then it even hurts it worse when you're trying to build something affordable. So density is something they're looking for. They have some interesting ideas. I won't bring up everything that we talked about, but parking requirements, alleys, things like that that cost extra, that makes it, they just back off some of these properties. An interesting thing that I think is something to consider when we're looking as well, a little bit, but the nice flat properties are, you're running out of those. And I really haven't thought that, and that's of course true, and logical. But, I'm interested in seeing how that plays out in some of this too, because that determines where you can go. You see this on something like a nice map somewhere. Looks like 21 wonderful acres, but we've seen in some of our past projects here, you got 5 acres you can really build on. And so it does make a difference. So we got one more housing meeting coming up to stay on that subject, to fine tune and aim in. And then a few more meetings where putting the pieces of the puzzles together. So hopefully working toward our deadline toward the end of the year. Thank you. Bruce, you may have something, you're always more eloquent or articulating, better articulate of this.
Oh. Sheriff, it's all right, segue.
Yeah.
Planning,
Yes.
interim
Report number
planning
2.
director.
He's my sidekick in all of those.
The steering committee is doing good work, and staff has really benefited from the interaction that's going on. I think the design of that group has played out as better than even we imagined. Conversation's been rigorous, it's been challenging, and that's what we need. And as we head into these next steps of the future land use plan development, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. We're actually going to be talking about the colors that are appearing on the map and what do they mean. Some of the questions tonight anticipated some of those choices, those trade-offs that we know we have to wrestle with as a community to set the table for our land use policies to function for the next 20 years. So the hard work's coming, but the foundation, I think, has been laid very, very well. Next month, we have 2 business items, one of which you are fairly familiar with. So what we want to do is take the opportunity while we have you, selfishly, and have the latter half of the meeting be an update on the future land use steering committee's work. We're going to invite them to attend, the members of the committee, if they have time. We're going to work with Alex to put together some content so that we can have more of a discussion at a checkpoint. Planning Commission is going to hear the recommendation from the steering committee. So we don't want you to be hit cold. We want you to have a moment in time for discussion. And you can hear where we got to this point, what lies ahead. We can have a more detailed discussion rather than the excellent summaries. We can actually get in and maybe pull apart on some things and kick the tires on some of the ideas that are being put out there. Because what we are still aiming for is for us to have something drawn up, ready to go to the mayor and commission, having gone through a good community input process. So we definitely don't want the planning commission to be caught cold. So October is a great opportunity with us having a relatively light agenda, and it keeps us right on track. So it was like a gift. So that's the end of my report.
Are your meetings on Monday afternoon?
They have always been, and probably will try to continue, Monday afternoons at between 2 and 4. Sarah had been, the other Sarah, attended that meeting and got a lot out of it. Sounds like we don't know which day. It's one of the last 2 Mondays of each month. We get closer in and figure that out.
Gotcha.
I'd like to let y'all know.
I will tag on. Tuesday night was mayor and commission items before them, Shady Brook, as well as the, can't remember the address, it was on Lexington Road, but essentially the remodel and reconstruction of the gas station out in front of the theaters. The theater item was approved unanimously. Shady Brook was not. So, the next steps, there were a handful of motions. If you happen to watch the recap, it's interesting, the discussion that took place. Where we are is it's a moment where the applicant withdrew after watching kind of the discussion unfold. They were given an opportunity to comment again, and they asked to withdraw. That allows them the opportunity to come back through the process. So you would see it again if they're going to develop something. A denial would have meant 12 months without any action for the property.
That's the one that connected through to the other one? right?
Yeah.
To remove,
Connected.
yeah, the
Yeah.
one that we just talked about last time.
Yeah.
Sea grapes.
What, would you be able to summarize why it was turned down?
Well, it wasn't turned down.
Or, well, yeah, yes, but it was,
Why it wasn't approved?
why they quit before they could be fired?
So the original motion that was put forward by the commissioner in whose district the development was in was to deny. Seconded, it was then a substitute motion to hold. They can for 40 days to allow for cause to develop, answer a question, do something. The original motion for denial didn't have a lot of explanation from the commissioner. But she did comment that she had been contacted by neighbors that were dissatisfied with construction recently on the other side. And the performance of that and the outcomes of that had them wanting a pause at best, if not a hard no, on anything that was as disruptive, her words, to the environment of those neighbors. There was some back and forth about how that communication took place. I think some of the commissioners were wanting the opportunity to hear that same input from those residents, but anyway, conversation went around that way. There was some discussion about binding plans, the wish for a binding plan, understanding when an applicant suggests the binding plan, what staff suggest, and the planning commission ultimately recommend that the plan not be binding. I had an opportunity at agenda review as well as at the voting session to explain why. And the challenge there is that the engineering for it is tough and it really hasn't been done. It's, to your point, Alex, it's not a flat site.
Hilly places.
It is dramatically steep along really a full half of its boundary. And so to be fair to the developer to have an opportunity to actually produce the product, the decision of this body and the analysis of staff was to not bind the plan to allow them to do what they were asking to do. Honestly, some of that dynamic about this full on, full off for binding, I think Rick may have generated some of your comments, not thinking about solutions and thinking about middles to where maybe you can bind components or aspects rather than a plan in entirety, not at all. And I think that way of thinking is probably going to be coming up more often because of the challenges of the sites and because we have design expectations and community expectations. Where's that middle ground? And that middle ground may take the form of these topical conditions or aspects of a development that we feel strongly about, but that the rest needs to remain flexible.
So maybe,
Yes, sir.
maybe we think about it less as adding a layer of bureaucracy. If we add a condition that might include a detail or two, and we think of it more as guidance for the next body to take into consideration that it's not a straight up rezone. There's some elements to it that will carry through. This just helps seal the deal.
In Sarah's comments, I think, well taken. We don't want to unnecessarily create hardship. That's why we had the recommendation we did with Shady Pool, was to not create a problem. So using your powers for good, not using them for evil, I think is kind of the theme on this. When is that a tool to pull out and actually use as part of a motion? And as planning staff, we want to be available, not just to the county commissioners, but to you as planning commissioners to think through some of those things. Because if there's something that jumps off the page, if there's something that in your analysis, I really like this looks like what we're aiming for. These other things, I'm not so sure about. We don't want to get into the practice of dissecting and picking and choosing all the time, but there are instances where it may make sense and it's absolutely appropriate to do it.
Yeah, I know on the hearings board, we take conservative approaches sometimes with things just because it lasts forever with a property. So you want to think about all the possibilities.
I mean, it's interesting with the perspective of, for anybody who doesn't know Lucy Rowland, like every time a straight rezone came up, she'd be like, straight rezone, they can do whatever they want once it's approved, which is absolutely true.
Well, they can do whatever they want with inside all of the design and building standards that we have in our massive code.
But I mean, you change from like residential to RM1, and that changes the dynamic of what you can put there. And you might say, oh, I want 3 townhouses, but you could actually get 6 on there. You know, like it adds that element of, oh, what if? Yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, my thing with straight reasons, I would be like, okay, don't trust them. And think of the worst thing they could build, apartment buildings. And then if they ended up building apartment buildings, would that be fine? Yeah. Let them reason. Hopefully they do the nice thing that they want to do, and maybe it's just apartments. But having doing the partial conditions, from a working with the legislative body makes sense.
The term I used the other night was guardrails.
Yeah,
You know, it just puts edges on the request. It still leaves flexibility in the middle.
were they worried about anything in particular? Like, did you get a sense of that, like, was there a particular, like, instead of binding to a site plan, is there like some other just small condition, like only this much density on something that would have kept them from like a guardrail, but not a hard boundary?
There was never anything said that was this thing in particular about this proposal is objectionable.
There was no,
It was never put that fine of a point on, and I think that was where it made it difficult to come up with a commission defined option that zeroed in on the aspect that was objectionable. Never made it to that point in the discussion.
There were some suggested guardrails by the body, though, if you go back and watch.
There were.
If you're interested in that.
Yeah.
Possibility.
One commissioner in particular, I think, tried to call out some notions, and it just never got traction.
Otherwise, there's miscellaneous announcements. I don't know. I got enough stuff.
I've actually,
Yes.
I know we want to go, and at 7:30 tonight, I was like, we were kicking ass and getting out of here with all this, and it's almost 9:00. I'm just bringing up, I was gonna abstain from the, what we were working on with the text amendment, because I'm still a little frustrated with the fact that text amendments can be changed by the mayor and commission, and then there's no circling that back, which is what we had recommended as a body that we do. And for the new ones, if you remember, I keep looking at you because you're the only one I can see, because I don't want to have to do something. I'm really not trying to stare you down, but, and so it's just, my brain just has a hard time grasping. We're doing all this work, and I did my work on the text amendment, and I circled and did and that. And we can recommend yes or no, and it goes on. And then they can change every single word of it, as I understand, and vote on that, and then it just becomes. And so, okay, I get why they did that, because they had a situation that it's like, if we could just change this right now, we'd be done. And so for the speed of things, I get the logic of why the mayor and commission did that. And I appreciate that. And I don't have any issues with anybody on the mayor and commission. But I just had a hard time going along with voting yes on something that they can change. And then our vote yes got changed, and it's still our vote yes. So I was just going to abstain from the vote because I didn't want to vote no because I liked it. But I decided to leave that out of the vote part. But now my question is to staff. So we just sent one, or I say we sent one, we voted yes, and mayor and commission is going to look at that. And they're either going to say yes or no, or make changes and vote on those changes at the meeting. If they do that, since it is something we need to know about, will staff get that, write it up, or once it's written legally and done, will we see what those changes are? I don't think this has happened yet, so I'm just sort of asking well in advance. They may not touch this at all. But do you follow what I'm saying so we understand what it was? Not see it officially. I mean, it's done by the time it would circulate. But just so we like, hey, this was changed to that for this reason.
Sure.
And then we then we understand.
Sure. Maybe an opportunity to summarize, kind of like I just did with the mayor commission meeting.
That's exactly what I was.
Focus in on the text amendment and say what happened. I'm happy to do that.
Okay. And specifically though, that way we're aware of the changes that they've made, and they may make good change. I mean, I got no issue with this particular mayor and commission. It's the 20-year from now mayor and commission, we don't know, that is always the scary one. That they make changes that are like whoosh, way over there. And so at least if we're keeping up with it, we at least know what it was.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Just so you all have the most up to date, I think we should be sending, whether they change it or not, we need to send you the ordinance. And if they do change it, we could send you that little.
I mean, we can do that, and there's also the amendments that occur online, but they take a minute, so. We can circle back that.
Not to add work to y'all, but just so we know we're in the loop of anything.
Job security, Alex, or something.
All right then. Well, I got a few more things. We'll talk about that. That's all I have.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion.
Right.
I thought you were making the motion.
No,
Second.
Terry the second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Yeah. There we go. Someone was told